When the whole neighborhood started bad-mouthing me, saying I was dirty and sick, I never imagined the real culprit would be someone much closer than I could have imagined. It all started subtly, but became unbearable as time went on. The neighborhood began spreading rumors about me. They said I was dirty, sick, someone who didn't even deserve to live in peace. At first, I thought it was just innocent gossip that would soon die down. But it wasn't. The words became stronger, more cruel. They said I didn't take care of my hygiene, that my house was a smelly place, that I had strange habits, and even that I was involved in things I didn't even do. Worst of all, these lies gained momentum because they were spread by people I never even imagined could harm me. Some neighbors I greeted every day and smiled at began to look at me with contempt, whispering behind my back. Even small children heard these stories and looked at me as if I were a dangerous person or a contagious disease. The feeling of being rejected, judged, and slandered was devastating. I tried to argue, explain, show who I really was, but no one wanted to listen. It was as if my bad reputation was already written on my forehead. Every encounter in the hallway, every ride in the elevator, every glance away from me, confirmed the false and cruel image they were spreading. With each day, my world became smaller, more closed, and the pain grew greater. I felt suffocated, humiliated, and powerless in the face of this injustice. Besides the rejection, situations began to arise that only increased the pressure. People avoided touching objects I left in common areas, children were warned not to approach me, and even the janitor became less cordial. I began to wonder if it was worth staying there, in that building, in that neighborhood that had become a courtroom that condemned me without proof. Behind all this, however, was an overwhelming desire to resist, to show the truth. I knew I wasn't who they said I was, that those accusations were baseless. But no matter how hard I tried to defend myself, it was difficult to break the cycle of rumors. The word of the powerful group seemed to be worth more than any argument I could muster. That was the moment I realized that the fight wouldn't just be against the rumors, but against the very way people give in to easy judgment, to destructive gossip, without seeking to understand the other side. The neighborhood, which could have been a space of coexistence and respect, became a minefield, where any step could mean another blow to my reputation. But something inside me wouldn't let me give up. I needed to find out who was behind that web of lies and what was really going on in that building. And that's when everything began to change. And the truth came out in a way no one expected. After the rumors began to spread, the atmosphere in the building changed completely. What was once a peaceful and friendly place, full of greetings in the elevator and brief conversations in the lobby, became a cold, tense environment, filled with suspicious looks and malicious whispers. It was as if I had become invisible, or worse, as if I was someone to be avoided, feared. This climate of distrust became increasingly heavy and suffocating. The feeling of isolation was one of the worst things I've ever experienced. Imagine living in a building where your neighbors, whom you saw every day, began to completely ignore you, to distance themselves. It wasn't just a lack of conversation, it was the silence, the void of attention and empathy. I could no longer rely on the support network that the neighborhood could provide. It was clear that, to them, I was already a marked person, someone dirty and sick, as the gossip called it. The simple act of leaving the house became a challenge. I felt the stares piercing my body, heard the whispers as I passed, and even a few nasty comments were made loud enough for me to hear. There were times when I nearly cried in front of people who should have been friends or at least neutral, but the truth was, no one bothered to defend me. It was as if I were condemned to carry that unfair label alone. As time passed, fear and anxiety began to overwhelm me. I wondered what I could have done to deserve all this, if I had done something wrong that I didn't realize. Doubt gnawed at me and made me question my own sanity. After all, when most people believe something negative about you, it's hard not to doubt yourself. It was a dark period, where loneliness mixed with profound sadness. Furthermore, the isolation grew not only socially but also emotionally. I avoided going out, knowing I would face judgment. I avoided contact with anyone who might fuel the rumors, and little by little, I began to withdraw, protecting myself to avoid further suffering. However, this isolation came at a high cost. I felt alone even in my own home, a place that should have been a refuge. It all got worse when I realized that some people, besides avoiding me, were actively involved in spreading even more lies and intrigue. I began to notice that small objects I left in common areas were disappearing or being moved, as if to disturb me. The building's security seemed to be non-existent for me, and the feeling that I was an outcast grew stronger and stronger. Finally, even with all this pressure, I knew I had to resist. I couldn't let myself sink into that pit of hurt and isolation. It was urgent to uncover the truth and clear my name, but until then, the daily struggle against loneliness and distrust consumed me. The question that kept running through my head was, who was behind all this? Who would be interested in destroying me like that? And most importantly, how could I prove my innocence amidst so many lies? It was at this breaking point that something unexpected happened. A person who had been silent until then decided to speak up. And that person would change the course of history forever. Amidst all that silence, filled with sidelong glances and veiled accusations, the person I least expected became the key to turning the tide. The building's doorman. For a long time, he kept to himself, seemingly oblivious to the chaos swirling within the condominium's walls. But little by little, it became clear that he knew more than he was letting on. And, most importantly, that he was tired of seeing an innocent person suffer because of the malice of others. It was on an ordinary afternoon, when I had almost given up trying to explain myself to the neighbors, that the doorman decided to speak up. He called me in for a private conversation and, with a serious look and a firm voice, revealed details that no one else wanted or could tell. He said that for months he had been observing the residents' movements and had heard many comments, but he had also seen actions that contradicted the rumors spread against me. What he told me changed everything. According to him, there were people in the building who behaved much worse, things that would never be admitted publicly, but which created a toxic atmosphere and harmed everyone, including me. He spoke of questionable behavior, gossip spread out of pure malice, disputes and jealousies hidden behind false smiles. He made it clear that I was being unfairly framed. More than that, the doorman revealed that he had evidence and testimonies that could expose this whole farce. He explained that he had been recording details, times, and names of those involved in situations that truly tarnished the building's reputation, but that had been masked and twisted so that the blame would fall on me. He felt responsible for bringing this truth to light so that justice could be served and my honor restored. This revelation was a turning point. For the first time, I felt I wasn't alone, that there was someone on my side willing to fight against lies and injustice. The doorman became a crucial ally, a guardian of the truth who wasn't afraid to confront the neighborhood. His testimony began to open the eyes of some people, who began to question their own opinions and realize that perhaps I wasn't who they said I was. From that moment on, the mood in the building began to change. Doubt began to replace blind judgment, and some people came to me to apologize and express regret for believing the gossip. The doorman remained steadfast, closely monitoring the unfolding situation, helping to clarify the facts and demonstrating that the truth cannot be silenced forever. But, of course, this change didn't happen without resistance. There were those who tried to discredit the doorman, those who tried to maintain the climate of gossip and hostility. However, the power of truth and the courage of someone who had nothing to gain but chose to act caused the house of cards to begin to crumble. This phase of history taught me that, even when all seems lost, a light can always appear where you least expect it. Someone willing to show what really happens, to unmask those who seek to destroy you out of envy, fear, or malice. And that's exactly what the doorman did. He became the unlikely hero who revealed those who were truly doing things far worse than the false accusations they threw at me. After the truth came to light thanks to the doorman's revelation, a new phase of my life began. One of rebuilding, learning, and, above all, overcoming. It wasn't an easy path, because even after being exonerated and seeing justice begin to be served, the scars of injustice were still present. The pain of months of rejection and isolation didn't disappear overnight, and I had to work hard to regain trust in myself and those around me. At first, the neighborhood's reaction was a mix of surprise, shame, and even embarrassment. Some people apologized, others simply walked away, unable to cope with their own guilt for having believed the lies. There were also those who tried to downplay everything or pretend nothing had happened, but I no longer cared about their opinion. The important thing was that I knew who I really was. And now the rest of the building was beginning to see that truth too. With the support of the doorman and a few people who showed their true selves, I was able to resume my social life. I returned to the building's common areas without fear. I returned to smiling at anyone who wanted to greet me. And most importantly, I returned to trusting my own voice. I learned that we cannot let other people's opinions define us, especially when that opinion is based on lies. Furthermore, this experience strengthened me to deal with other difficulties. I discovered a resilience I didn't know I had, and an inner strength capable of withstanding even the most adverse situations. I understood that, often, people's cruelty is a reflection of their own fears and insecurities, and that the best response is to move forward with dignity, without stooping to the level of those who try to bring you down. Today, looking back, I see how valuable that situation was. It taught me the importance of not judging anyone without knowing the truth, of allowing space for dialogue before believing rumors, and of supporting those who suffer unfairly. I also understand the power of courage. The courage of those who decide to speak the truth, even when it's difficult, and the courage of those who insist on being true to themselves, even when the whole world seems to conspire against them. This story, which could have been just a sad chapter of injustice, became an example of resilience and hope. I know many people go through similar situations, victims of gossip, slander, and social exclusion. My message to anyone going through this is, don't give up. The truth always finds a way to emerge, and you are much stronger than you imagine. I know the neighborhood will never be perfect, and perhaps some people will continue to make unfounded judgments. But now I stand firm, knowing that my dignity doesn't depend on other people's opinions, and that I can rebuild my life with honesty, respect, and self-love.